did, you did. Well, the systems did. We had to restart. We had to put new batteries in things. It's just like you give them and you take away an hour, and they just. But good morning. I've got to try to remember to stay to this side because if you watch this on Zoom, you know the screen shows up down here. And if I were to move over here right now, I'd be behind the screen someplace. So I've got to remember, if you see me venture too far that way, move me back. Okay? Thank you. Corey, would you start us with a prayer, please?
Thank you, Father. Thank you for this day, the opportunity for us to gather here. Help us to learn about your word and find application in it. Thank you for the many blessings you bless us with. Just in we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, last week, I'll be sure this works now. Last week we started this series on the inspiration and authority of the scriptures. Mostly what we talked about last week was the inspiration, and we'll just breeze through these real quickly. These are probable upcoming topics, not necessarily in that order, but these are topics that I would like us to cover. So, you read those, I expect. We talked about reasons to believe. We do a lot of things based on credible witnesses or trusted witnesses. We try certain restaurants, we read certain books, and so on and so on. I can pretty well tell you some good products to use to make your paint shine on the car. I shared the incident of the first Subaru we bought and how many people bought after that. I shared the inside of Cheyenne Mountain, part of it. Those are the blast doors. And I shared with you how I was in there at the time. We did the first in several decades button up. That's when they closed the doors. And there was some reason for concern on the parts of many in the complex that, well, what if they don't open? So I stayed for a couple of reasons. I had some degree of faith in the technology because I was pretty close with the guy who ran the hydraulic shop. And he was able to explain to me that, yeah, it'll work. So we make a lot of decisions based on faith. So faith is important. And it's important in our accepting the scriptures. And that was all that. I just told you about that. And then we went through some things rather quickly about evidence and witnesses for the scripture. We cannot see Jesus perform miracles today. But we do have trustworthy accounts. Sorry about that. Did I get it for you? I almost went ahead, so. But we do have trusted witnesses in the authors of the Bible. So, a lot of different things we looked at. We looked at some Old Testament passages. Anybody recall what that one is? Psalm 19:1. One of the greatest witnesses to God's power. The heavens declare the glory of God. Okay? So, and he went on. And there are similar things. Paul wrote a similar thing in the New Testament. I have a whole chapter of, most of the chapter of witnesses to God's power and his word. And let's see. From God or man. And that's where we're going to go. And this is a new cover slide that Dan sent me yesterday. So you'll probably see one or the other several times as we go through this. So for today, I'm going to rely a lot on discussion today. All those weeks that I did something and you didn't get a whole lot of time to say something, today's your chance. So let's first start with recognizing that there is a need for authority. I've listed a few places up here. Somebody pick one and explain why it's important that there be authority there.
Police.
Go ahead.
Well, if there was not a police, well, I shouldn't say that, because there is still law without the police. And I think sometimes we forget that, but they are operating within the confines of the, I'll say, law. And without that, we have disorder.
Okay.
Maybe more than that, everybody would be free to do as they please, see judges.
Ooh, okay. Somebody pick another one.
Home.
Oh my. Go ahead. You could talk for a while, but in 25 words or less.
I'd say it's the same thing. In the home, if there's no authority, then the prisoners are free to rule the prison at some level. There's no authority, there's no guide. Everybody does as they please, again, see judges.
All right. Next one. You look eager to say something, or are you just happy to be here?
School.
School? Oh yeah, that'd be a good one for you. Go ahead.
Well, within the classroom, you have to have authority, and the students have to respect you. But then also, on a higher level, you need administration who has authority and rules the school in a good way. So
Yeah.
respect it.
All right. Anybody else? Nobody wants to talk about
Sports.
No? Okay.
No, Kim's got.
Kim's got one. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, within the work environment, kind of like what was being discussed, you not only have authority being put in place and a respect for that authority, but you also have an enablement of individuals in that position. And without that, you can't do the things you need to do either.
So they have authority and the power to wield that authority.
Right.
Okay. Somebody said sports. Was that you again, Gary?
Yeah, but I was going to let somebody else jump in.
Okay. Gary wants somebody to jump in on sports. Okay, Marcus would be. Go ahead.
You need officials to regulate.
Explain your role in sports. What do you
My
do?
role? I coach. So you need a coach to lead the team, and if sometimes, well, football stays to call out plays, basketball as well.
All right, so leading.
It's kind of like the CEO aspect of the team, but you also need officials to regulate the games.
All right. Everybody catch what Marcus has said about sports and the need for authority in sports. And we all reserve the right to get upset with the referees, right? Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else want to pick one and say anything?
Mr. Jim,
Mm-hmm.
I think to your referee comment, you can be upset when you think they made a wrong call,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
That's true.
And so that therein was their
Yeah.
ultimate verdict.
Yeah. Say all we want, complain all we want, but they made the call. All right. There is nothing written here right now. So I would like somebody here to define authority. As you think of it, what is authority? Marcus.
I would say whatever entity is responsible for controlling the overall function of, I'm drawing a blank on the word I want to use for that, but
Of the organization.
yeah, that word.
Okay. Anybody else want to define what authority? Yes, ma'am.
I like that you use responsible because I feel like it's a right and a responsibility to lead, to guide, to nurture. A lot of people think of authority as right, well, I'm the one with the power. And it's a responsibility. You're looking out for the best of whatever it is that you've been given responsibility for.
Good point. Good point. Anybody else? Josh?
I'll add under her definition, adding vision and some level of regulation, or keeping you on track towards that vision. And another way to look at
also with servant authority, which would include an aspect of providing for, caring, and providing some of the needs that we talked about, for example, in the work example, to make sure that you have what you need to get that vision accomplished.
Okay. Keep all these things in mind. Anybody want to add more? Bernard.
I'd like to give orders, like to be in charge. Pretty much, yeah. To give orders and be in charge of something.
Okay. Okay. Before I go to the book definitions, last call. Anybody else? Authority is leave or permission, liberty of doing as one pleases, the ability or strength with which one is endued, the power of authority, the right to exercise power.
Ends up, it's interesting, in the military, normally it is the senior person who has authority in that particular situation.
Yeah.
And because of that, there are certain responsibilities that they have. I can remember a time in a situation where there were individuals that were senior, but they would not take responsibility. Won't go any farther, but that's...
Okay. Been there, done that. Or had to pick up the loose end there, but yeah. Had a major once who was afraid to talk to a colonel. Well, I said, well, I can. But another one is the power to enforce obedience, the right to command or act, the person who has such power or right. Then we've heard people described as, he is the authority on this particular whatever it is. So, all those other areas we've looked at, we see the need for authority. Is there a need for authority in religion? This is that no-brainer for the day. Yeah.
Yes or
A
no?
lot of up and down. Yeah.
But why? I guess that's, I don't know whether your next question is why.
That's okay, go ahead. I said you don't get a chance.
Yeah. Why do you need authority in religion? I'm asking in general because I have my opinion, but it's, look at the world. How many denominations are in the United States?
Gary is answering his question.
Yeah, I know.
Others are
I'm
going to be
sorry.
free to participate as well. Okay? So when you think of the answer, Gary will be done here in a minute.
Well, I'm done. I just asked another question. How many denominations are in the United States? And all of them saying they serve, quote unquote, the same God.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what is the need for authority from your comments?
If you don't have it, you can have confusion.
As we do. Now, anybody else want to answer Gary's question? Why do we need authority in religion? Randy?
Without it, we really don't know the right thing or the wrong thing to do.
Okay. A couple of times here this morning, Josh referred to judges. What was happening that God had to raise up judges? What's the Bible say was going on?
A lot of sin. People were straying from the word of God. There was mostly worship of idols.
And how was their conduct described?
Everyone was doing it that pleased them.
All right. Everyone was doing what seemed right in their own eyes. Without clear-cut authority. That's what happens. So, we're going to look at some things. We're going to start with Matthew chapter 21, verses 23 through 25. Would somebody read that, please? Not going to call on anybody. I know there are very able readers here. So, Matthew 21, 23 through 25. If somebody wants to make the setting or explain the setting, And we'll see what they're saying, what the book says. What's happening in verses just prior?
The triumphal entry. Jesus just cursed the fig tree. And then Jesus' glory is being challenged greatly.
What was he doing?
He went into the temple and he saw that
Okay.
it was being used for other purposes.
All right. So he's asked, do you want to go ahead with the passage?
Sure. 23 to 29.
Please.
When he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him while he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" Jesus said to them, "I will also ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John was from what source? From heaven or from man?" And when they began reasoning among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, then why did you not believe him?"
He was good. So what's the suggestion? That there are two sources of authority. Let's look at a couple passages that pretty well explain what happens if we follow one of those. Proverbs 14:12. Good to look it up, but I bet when you see it, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, I knew that one." And if we can get somebody to move on to the second one there. Jeremiah 10.
Proverbs 14:12, there's a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death.
And Jeremiah.
Jeremiah 10:23. I know, O Lord, that the way of man is not in himself, that it is not in man who walks to direct his steps. I think the next verse makes a lot of sense to me too.
Then go for it.
Correct me, O Lord, but in justice, not in your anger, lest you bring me to nothing. So it's God's direction that matters.
Okay, let's get that. It's God's direction that matters. God is the source of authority in all matters, but we're talking about religion here now. So in religion, it's what God says that matters. Everybody clear? We're going to go on with that. Everybody clear?
Doesn't this always beg a question? Because there are many people who say the Bible isn't a source.
Yeah.
You can't use the Bible because it's not authoritative.
Right.
And if you don't accept that, then all of what else we're going to talk about really becomes moot.
Yeah. So it goes back to last week, and I hope you've done other study and you did more based on what surface scratching we did, but the scriptures are inspired. They are inspired. We have got to accept that by faith and by the fact that we talked about trusted witnesses. The universe is here, and you know, the further these telescopes are coming up with look out there, the more impressed I am with passages that talk about, you know, the magnitude of God's creation. Rob, go ahead.
Back in Matthew, though, the key question I think is, who gave you this authority? The authority is given, and in this situation, it was given from God to Jesus, and that's what he's trying to prove. We've seen situations where people try to take authority, and when it's tested or proven, it falls apart. So a person that we've heard of stories that impersonate police officers and put lights in their cars and pull somebody over, and they're impersonating somebody. They were not given authority to do that job. Whereas in this situation, Jesus is proving he was given this authority.
Okay. And later on in Matthew 28, he's going to say in no uncertain terms, all authority has been given to me, and then he sends his disciples out, so on. Let's go to Exodus chapter 30. Somebody want to do a longer reading? Gonna have another Old Testament reading here shortly, but let's go to Exodus 30. Craig, thank you.
You shall make an altar to burn incense on. You shall make it of acacia wood. A cubit shall be its length, and a cubit its width. It shall be square, and 2 cubits shall be its height. Its horns shall be of one piece with it. And you shall overlay its top, its sides all around, and its horns with pure gold. And you shall make for it a molding of gold all around. 2 gold rings you shall make for it under the moldings on both its sides. You shall place them on its 2 sides, and they will be holders for the poles with which to bear it. You shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And you shall put it before the veil that is before the ark of testimony, before the mercy seat that is over the testimony, where I will meet with you.
Hold on just a minute. Now pay attention to these next few verses. You're going to go through 10.
Aaron shall burn on it sweet incense every morning. When he tends the lamps, he shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps at twilight, he shall burn incense on it, perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations. You shall not offer strange incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a grain offering, nor shall you pour a drink offering on it. And Aaron shall make the atonement upon its horns once a year with the blood of the sin offering of atonement. Once a year you shall make atonement upon it throughout your generations. It is most holy to the Lord.
So what do you get out of that?
My version in verse 9, it says unauthorized. So there's a right way, an authorized way, and an unauthorized way. Because there's an authority who has an expectation.
Okay, anybody else? What do you get out of that?
Well, it had a particular way it was supposed to be carried, even though it's not fully described, it's there.
Okay, you probably get to that.
Yeah.
Randy, I saw your hand.
Without those detailed instructions, there's no way you would accidentally just follow those behavior patterns.
Okay. And specifically, besides all the specificity in the design and the construction, who was to burn incense on it? Aaron and also his descendants as that happened. But go to 2 Chronicles chapter 26. I think that's what I want. Yeah, down about verse 16. But before you go there, read verse 5. Well, let's just have 1 through 6, 1 through 5 read. Let's get the whole picture. Marcus.
He said the first 5 verses.
For now, yeah.
But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction, for he was unfaithful to the Lord.
Could somebody else jump around on the page to see who was being talked about here? Amaziah. Go ahead.
For he was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and in the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. But Azariah, the priest, went in after him, with 80 priests of the Lord, who were men of valor, and they withstood King Uzziah and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from the Lord God." Then Uzziah was angry. Now he had a censer in his hand to burn incense. And when he became angry with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priests in the house of the Lord, by the altar of incense. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead. And they rushed him out quickly, and he himself hurried to go out, because the Lord had struck him. And King Uzziah was a leper to the day of his death, and being a leper, lived in a separate house, and he was excluded from the house of the Lord. And Jotham his son was over the king's household, governing the people of the land.
Okay, I said Amaziah should have been Uzziah, as most of you were saying. So let's talk about it. What did he do that was good?
He always start out for
For a time, anyway.
For a time.
Yeah. Started out that way. Okay? And according to verse 5, as long as he did that, how'd it go?
God made him prosperous.
God made him prosper. But then, in those intervening verses we did not read, what did he do? He built all the trappings of a successful kingdom, you know, big army, wealth, and so on. And then he got to usurping some authority. You see that in there? He went to burn incense on the altar, even though people tried to stop him. Said, that's not for you to do. So what lessons should we take from that kind of thing?
He was given very specific instructions. He didn't study them, he didn't have knowledge, he didn't have wisdom to listen to those around him who did have those things, and he did it his own way.
What lessons should we take from that?
God has authority over all. Even those who have authority, God rules over all.
Yeah, good point.
We need to check our pride too, because he was blessed with all these things from God, and then what his pride made him confident, and his confidence made him act corruptly.
All right. Other comments? Barry, you look like you're ready.
Well, we need to recognize that God's things are God's. The holiness of the altar wasn't because of what they were doing. It was because God deemed it holy, and it was his. Keep your hands off of God's things.
What's Deuteronomy 29:29 say? I think that's the one I want.
The secret things
Yeah.
belong to the Lord our God.
Something like that. What's another passage about God's ways? Secret things belong to God, yes. He knows a whole lot more than any of us are ever going to know, or all of us collectively are ever going to know. You know, he's just infinite in knowledge. He understands things that I can't even spell. Okay? If he says, this is how it is, then that better be the way it is. That's the way we better treat it. And he had said, Aaron can offer incense, burn incense, on this altar. Didn't say anybody else could. Some people were astute enough to recognize, some people were astute enough to recognize that that's not the way God wants it. You don't have the fill in the blank. You don't have the authority to do this. But he would not accept that. Yes, ma'am.
God's established also just different boundaries for authority, I guess. Like he had authority as a king, but he decided to carry that over into the church, essentially, you know. And today it's the same. He's established government authority. He's established authority over the home. He's established the authority of the church. And it's important to respect those boundaries and not abuse those.
Good point. Anybody else? Before we leave Uzziah alone. So what happened to him? You can't, yeah, lots of fun now.
He was unsanctified.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
There are times when God provides immediate punishment, discipline, but many times He doesn't. And that's a dangerous situation where you're sinning or you're breaking a law against God, and you don't see an immediate punishment. And that's what we have to keep in mind. We have to continually discipline ourselves to realize we need to follow God's word.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Pride seemed to be his downfall. He did so well when
Yeah.
he depended on God and his authority.
Okay.
Everything went so well for him. He just did everything. He's overstepped the boundaries.
Yeah. When things are going so well and things look so great for us, and we get puffed up about it. Pride goes before the destruction. And a haughty spirit. So,
Mr. Chairman, throughout this conversation, I've been thinking about Peter and John in Acts chapter 4, and whenever they're going to tell them, hey, you gotta calm it down. They say, we're going to do what we need to do to serve God. You do what you gotta do, but we're going to choose to submit to that authority, regardless of what you're going to do to us. And I think it's a good example of what Connor this month said about pride as well. We check their own authority and
we're going to talk about a few of those. I've got 12 minutes left. We're going to talk about a few of those. Okay. Next passages go to Leviticus chapter 10, and somebody else might want to take a look, real quick scan of chapter 16. Chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. What did these two do? Everybody's familiar with these two. Nadab and Abihu did what?
Offered strange fire.
Strange fire. Okay? They offered strange fire, and what happened? It consumed them. Okay? So, they offered something that had not been authorized. Chapter 16 is where we find the authorization. The description, etc. They were to have taken the fire from and used it there. But some other passages. We're familiar with almost the same kind of name, spelling and all, but how were they supposed to have carried the ark? How were they supposed to have carried it? On poles that were passed through rings on the side, and these gentlemen would carry it on their shoulders. But somebody had the bright idea. You know, this would be a lot easier if we just put it up on a cart and carry it. Well, apparently they got some distance, but then the cart rocked. And somebody reached up to steady the ark. And what happened to that somebody? He died. Lesson?
Don't do what God says not to do.
I'm sorry.
Don't do what God says not to do.
Okay, don't do what God says not to, or do what He says to do. You know, He's not necessarily going to say, I've told you this is the way I want it, but don't even think about going here. He didn't do that. He said, this is the way I want it. Marcus, you had your hand up.
That's pretty much what I was doing.
Okay. Caitlin?
Well, don't try to usurp God's wisdom, too. We had an incident with Henry the other day where Dean told him, put this back in the side yard. And after a while, we couldn't find him, and he was down the street. We had told him, do not leave the yard. But he thought, well, I think I'm supposed to find where this goes, and I can't find it where he said, so I'm going to go down the street and try to find it. Stupid. idiot, freaked us out. But he thought he was wiser than his parents because he was like, well, I'll find out this. And he ignored the boundaries that we had set for him. And sometimes we try to do the same thing with God. We go, well, God wouldn't really want me to do that. I know he says that, but things have changed, or times have changed, or I think I know a better way. And so just to keep that God's wisdom in his boundaries, we don't have to question why he says to do something, just do it.
My ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Believe it, live it, accept it. Okay? Mark or Bernard, your hand is up.
I think obedience is better than sacrifice, and that is what Azar was trying to do here. And there is no difference from what he has done in the past that has been written in the Bible. When we look at denominational churches doing all kinds of practices and doctrine practices, and when you question them, why do you do what you do, they will tell you that we feel like doing things this way pleases God. But then we have the scriptures with us till this day, which gives us the instructions that God wants us to follow in order to please him.
We're going to have several weeks yet. Okay? Don't mean to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off. A couple more things I want to cover here this morning. But we're going to have a few weeks to talk about that sort of thing. Okay? So come back. Be prepared. Josh, I'll get you in a minute. Some of the other presumed sources of authority, particularly in religion, and we saw those in the Old Testament and the New Testament, but so a lot of people have tried to bring over Old Testament doctrine and make it applicable to the church. How many times, and I expect most of us have heard somebody talk about, well, I tithe. Oh, really? We're not going to get into all the mechanics and details of tithing, but they're meaning I contribute 10% of my income. That's far from what all was involved, but that, and they say, well, they used instrumental music in Old Testament times in worshiping God, so why can't we? Well, we'll get to that. Another one is, our preacher says this. I'm happy we have the preacher we do and that he teaches Bible, because according to 2 Timothy chapter 4, what is the preacher supposed to preach? The word. Some people think the elders have all kinds of authority to make decisions. No. Got three of them in the room. Any one of us going to say we have the right, the authority to make the calls about doctrine, about the way things God has commented on? Good. The wishes of the people. Remember the Old Testament, the times that whoever was in charge said, got caught in, I've done something. He gets challenged, and yeah, but the people made me do it. The people wanted an idol. The people wait a minute. If one person can make a mess of something, think what a whole group of people can do. God said, this is the way I want it. You shall have no carved images and so on. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15, verse 9, and if somebody else would turn over to Colossians chapter 2, those two verses. Who's in Matthew 15? Go.
Verse 9?
Yeah.
But in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the precepts of men.
Who's talking? Who said that? Jesus. They worship me, teaching the doctrines of men. What were the two early sources we saw for authority? What did Jesus ask?
Man or God?
Yeah. So what's he saying here? These people are teaching doctrines of men, and they are worshiping me in vain. Randy, you got a comment?
Yeah, so just on the concept of doctrine, so often when I'm studying with someone, as soon as I say details, they'll say, oh, you're getting into doctrine now.
Oh, yeah.
So I turn here and I'm like, yeah, you're right. And Christ said doctrine is critical.
Yeah. Just because we cannot miss it. Before we get to Colossians chapter 2, somebody go to 2 John 9, or quote it if you will. Is doctrine important? 2 John 9 says,
whosoever goeth onward and abideth not in the teachings of Christ hath not God. He that abideth in the teaching, the same hath both the Father and the Son.
okay, and other versions will use for the word teachings, they will use
Doctrine.
doctrine. Is doctrine important? Okay. All right, now, Colossians chapter 2.
21:22.
Yep.
Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, referring to the things that all perish as they are used, according to the human precepts and teachings.
Okay. Probably should have got another verse or two. What was Paul cautioning them about?
If you read the verse 20, I think it makes some more sense.
Go
He's basically saying, if with Christ you have died to the elemental spirits of the world, why? As if you were still alive in the world, you submit to regulations. Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle, referring to things that perish as they are used according to human precepts, because they have an appearance of wisdom and promoting self-made religion and severity to the body. But if they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh.
Okay. Things might look like, that'd be a good idea. We could fill this auditorium if we just had a rock band up front. We took all that out and we bought this building. So whoever was here before did have all that stuff. We could fill this auditorium if we had coffee and donuts before services. All these things that might seem like a good idea, especially when you lost an hour's sleep and you need that extra cup of coffee and the donut would be. But that's not what it's about. It's about doing things God's way. And we're going to spend several weeks now going into some more detail, identifying what is God's way. Why did God say this is okay, but gave no authority for something else? So please come back ready to talk and discuss. You did it very well today. He has participated. A final comment.
One more quick comment. Don't forget that we're the subjects of the law. We still have to study and know what the law is. And I think that's the other half of that.